In the quiet of this moment, let us turn inward and explore the wisdom of Epictetus. The Stoic philosopher taught that true freedom lives not in our circumstances, but in the sanctuary of our own minds. Consider first the remarkable gift you possess, the ability to observe your own thinking. Among all the capacities granted to human beings, this one stands apart. When you study music, you examine melodies and harmonies outside yourself. When you practice a craft, your attention flows toward the materials in your hands. But reason alone can turn back upon itself, like a mirror reflecting its own surface. It can watch itself work, question its own conclusions, and gently correct its course. This is what makes you human in the highest sense. This self-awareness, this inner eye that sees your own seeing, is perhaps the closest thing to the divine that dwells within you. And yet, how often do we neglect it? How often do we move through our days without pausing to examine the instrument through which we experience everything? To develop this faculty is not merely self-improvement. It is honoring the sacred capacity you carry. As you rest now, breathing slowly, let this truth settle into you. What truly belongs to you is smaller and more powerful than you might have imagined. The gods, or nature, or however you understand the forces that shape existence, have given you one genuine possession. Not your body, though you inhabit it. Not your property, though you may use it. Not your reputation, though others may speak it. These are borrowed things on loan from the world, subject to time and change and circumstances beyond your command. What belongs to you entirely and irrevocably is how you choose to use your thoughts. It is the power to perceive rightly, to respond with wisdom, to interpret events with clarity or with distortion. This inner orientation, this capacity to direct your own mind, this is your true inheritance. Everything else is temporary, rented, held in trust. When you understand this distinction deeply, a certain lightness enters. You stop defending what was never truly yours to keep. And in accepting this, you begin to see that what might have seemed like cosmic cruelty is actually cosmic necessity. The world is made of matter, time, and chance. It operates according to laws that even the divine cannot suspend. Your body will age and fail because all physical things do. Your circumstances will shift because change is woven into the fabric of existence. This is not punishment. This is not neglect. This is simply how things are. Even if the gods themselves wish to make you invulnerable, to make your possessions permanent, to guarantee your comfort forever, they could not. The universe is structured such that what begins must end, what rises must fall, what gathers must eventually scatter. To rage against this is to rage against gravity, against the turning of seasons, against the nature of reality itself. But to accept it fully and without bitterness is the beginning of wisdom. It is the moment you stop fighting the world and begin to live skillfully within it. This acceptance opens the door to something precious, inner freedom. The freedom the Stoics speak of is not the freedom to do whatever you wish or have whatever you want. It is something far more reliable. It is mastery over your own desires and aversions, sovereignty over your own responses. This is the freedom that cannot be taken from you by any external force. Protect this domain with fierce attention. Make it your primary concern, your central practice. When you guard your inner freedom carefully, when you refuse to let external events dictate your inner state, something remarkable happens. You become unenslavable. Pain may visit your body, but it need not disturb your mind. Loss may touch your life, but it need not shatter your peace. Fear may whisper at the edges, but it need not command your choices. This is the castle that cannot be breached, the kingdom that remains yours even when everything else is stripped away. To maintain this freedom, learn to attach yourself only to what endures. Notice how much suffering comes from clinging. We wrap our sense of self around our wealth and then live in anxiety about markets and thieves. We intertwine our identity with our family and then suffer unbearably when time and circumstance shift those relationships. We build our worth upon our reputation and then become enslaved to others' opinions. Each attachment multiplies your vulnerability. Each thing you cling to becomes a chain that pulls you away from your center. But there is another way. You can attend instead to your reason, to your moral character, to the quality of your conduct. These are stable. These cannot be stolen or destroyed by external forces. These remain yours until your last breath. When you invest your energy here, when you care most about acting rightly rather than being comfortable, about thinking clearly rather than being praised, you discover a kind of stability that no fortress of wealth or wall of reputation could ever provide. This brings us to a profound equanimity, indifference to circumstance. Imagine a skilled sailor on the open sea. The wind shifts, the weather changes, the waves rise and fall. Does the sailor tremble and complain each time the conditions alter? No. The sailor knows that the wind is not his to command. What belongs to him is his judgment, his skill, his response. He adjusts the sails, reads the signs, makes wise decisions within whatever conditions he faces. He does not demand that the ocean become calm. He learns to navigate the ocean as it is. This is how the Stoic moves through life, not demanding that circumstances conform to preferences, but acting rightly within whatever circumstances arise. Living in tune with nature means accepting the weather of your life and choosing your response with wisdom and grace. And here is perhaps the most liberating truth of all. Your will cannot be chained. Others may have power over your body. They may imprison it, injure it, even end its life. But they cannot touch your will unless you hand it to them. As Epictetus taught from his own experience of slavery, not even Zeus himself can overpower a mind that remains free. Your choices, your consent, your inner assent, these are yours alone. Someone may force your body to kneel, but they cannot force your mind to submit. They may take everything you own, but they cannot take your dignity unless you surrender it. This inner sovereignty is your truest self. It is who you are beneath all the roles and labels and circumstances. Guard it, honor it. Remember that regardless of what happens to you, this core of freedom remains untouched unless you yourself abandon it. When death approaches or misfortune arrives, this understanding becomes your anchor. The event itself, death, exile, loss, illness, is neutral. What creates suffering is not the event, but your judgment about the event, your opinion that it is terrible, unbearable, the worst thing that could happen. But you cannot avoid dying. Every person who has ever lived has faced this same necessity. What you can choose is to die without complaint, to meet that final moment with composure rather than panic. You cannot escape loss. The nature of existence guarantees that what you love will change and eventually leave. But you can meet that loss without drowning in self-pity, without cursing the universe for being exactly what it has always been. This is not coldness. This is clarity. This is meeting reality without the additional burden of resentment. In each moment, then, practice this simple discernment. Let reason, not fear, choose your response. When hardship appears, pause and ask yourself this question: is this mine to control? If the answer is yes, if the matter truly lies within your power, then act wisely. Bring your full attention and your best judgment to bear. If the answer is no, if the matter lies beyond your control, then accept it gracefully. To resist what is not yours to control is to struggle against reality itself, to exhaust yourself pushing against a wall that will not move. All the energy you spend in that futile struggle could be redirected toward what you can influence: your own thoughts, your own choices, your own character. As you drift towards sleep now, hold this final image. The Stoic ideal is to live as though nothing external can disturb your peace. This does not mean nothing external will ever happen. Storms will come, losses will occur, challenges will arise. It means that these events, however dramatic, need not shake your inner tranquility. Fate governs outcomes, but reason governs response. Whether you are condemned or praised, exiled or celebrated, sick or healthy, rich or poor, you remain fundamentally the same. A being with the power to choose how to meet each moment. Let duty, not desire, guide your actions. Do what is right because it is right, not because it will bring you comfort or acclaim. And when life eventually calls for you to surrender, when it asks for the return of this body you have borrowed, these relationships you have cherished, this particular story you have lived, release them peacefully. They were never truly yours to keep. What was always yours? Your inner freedom, your capacity for wisdom, your ability to respond with grace. These you carry until the very end. Rest now in this understanding. Breathe softly, and know that in the depths of your being, you possess a freedom that nothing in this world can take away. Let us continue our journey into the teachings of Epictetus, allowing his wisdom to wash over us like gentle waves, softening the edges of worry, inviting the mind toward rest. Consider this paradox. What if the pain you experience is not what you think it is? The rational mind, when truly awake and clear, finds no inherent suffering in the blows life delivers. A loss occurs, an insult lands, even death approaches, and yet the rational mind observes these as facts, as movements in the world, no more inherently painful than rain falling or seasons changing. Where then does suffering originate? It arises not from the events themselves, but from the feeling that something irrational, something fundamentally wrong, has occurred. It is the sense that reality has violated some law it should have obeyed, that the universe has broken a promise it never made. This is the wound that truly aches. So when you feel pain, pause in that tender moment and examine it gently. Ask yourself with curiosity rather than judgment. Is it the event itself that hurts, or my opinion about the event? Is it the reality, or my resistance to reality? Often, you will find that the event is neutral, like a stone or a cloud, and all the suffering lives in the layer of interpretation you have placed upon it. This recognition doesn't make the pain vanish instantly, but it shifts something fundamental. It reveals where your true work lies. And this leads to a subtle but essential practice. You must discipline your sense of what is rational. It is tempting to believe that reason is obvious, universal, the same for everyone. But look closely at the world, and you will see. What one person considers rational, another dismisses as foolish or even base. One person reasons their way toward courage, another toward cowardice, and both believe they are being logical. How can this be? Because reason is not merely the ability to think, but the quality and direction of that thinking. Philosophy, then, is not just the practice of reasoning. It is the continuous refinement of what we consider reasonable. Without this discipline, without the patient work of examining and elevating our standards, we fall into confusion. We mistake what is convenient for what is right. We call rational whatever serves our immediate comfort, our fleeting desires. The untrained mind can reason its way into any compromise, any betrayal, and call it wisdom. True philosophy trains you to recognize the difference between clever justification and genuine understanding, between rationalization and reason. This is why you must know your own worth and the price at which you might sell it. Every person, if honest, can identify a price. For some it is wealth, for others safety, for others the approval of those they love. There is some threshold where integrity becomes negotiable, where principle bends to convenience. Know yours. Become intimately familiar with your vulnerabilities, your points of weakness, and then, day by day, raise that price. Make yourself more expensive. The truly free person does not barter their reason for bread, does not trade their moral will for comfort or favor. To yield what is most essentially yours, your capacity for right judgment, your inner sovereignty, in exchange for some external gain, however necessary it may seem, is slavery wearing the mask of prudence. You may tell yourself you had no choice, that survival demanded the compromise. But Epictetus would gently remind you, they may have power over your body, your circumstances, even your life, but your will remains your own unless you sell it. The question is not whether you will face pressure to compromise. You will. The question is, what is your price? And are you working each day to make it higher? When virtue is clear, do not deliberate. There is a story of Agrippinus, who was summoned by Nero to perform in degrading spectacles for the emperor's amusement. Others debated whether they should comply, weighing the consequences, calculating the risks. But Agrippinus did not deliberate. For him, there was no question. To debase himself was unthinkable, settled in advance by his commitment to living according to his nature. The moment you begin to debate whether to compromise virtue, you have already begun to lose it. Deliberation implies uncertainty, and in that uncertainty, the door opens to rationalization. The mind, so clever and nimble, can justify almost anything if given enough time and motivation. This is why your principles must be established before the crisis arrives. You must decide in advance, in calm moments like this one, what you will not trade, what you will not debate, what remains sacred and non-negotiable. Then, when pressure comes, when circumstances scream for compromise, you do not waste energy on deliberation. You simply act according to what you have already decided is true. In this way, choose to be the purple thread. Imagine existence as a vast garment woven from countless threads. Most are grey, blending into the mass, indistinguishable from one another, creating a background of uniformity. There is safety in that greyness, a certain comfort in not standing out. But virtue makes a different choice. It chooses to be the purple thread, distinct, bright, dignified, visible. The purple thread does not blend. It stands forth, and in standing forth, it lends beauty to the entire garment. Without it, the cloth would be drab and lifeless. With it, there is richness, distinction, something that catches the eye and pleases the soul. Ask yourself each day, not with harsh judgment, but with genuine curiosity, am I blending into the mass of unreflective living? Am I going along with what is easy, expected, convenient? Or am I embodying excellence in my particular place, shining with whatever light is mine to offer? You need not be loud or grandiose. The purple thread does not shout. It simply refuses to be grey. It maintains its colour, its integrity, its particular contribution to the whole. And here is a crucial understanding. Let your actions define your station, not the commands of others. There is a story of Helvidius Priscus, who stood firm before the Emperor Vespasian, speaking truth, even under threat of death. Another senator might have chosen obedient silence, calculating that survival was more valuable than speech. And perhaps, for that person, silence was the right choice. We each have our role to play, but Helvidius knew his role. He was called to speak truth in the Senate, to embody the principle of honest counsel, even when it was dangerous, when duty and peril conflict, when the right action invites suffering. Act according to the part that reason has assigned you. Not everyone is called to be a martyr. Not everyone is called to public confrontation. But you are called to something, some particular expression of virtue that fits your nature, your capacities, your circumstances. The question is not, what will keep me safest, but what role is mine to play, and how can I play it with integrity? Your station in life is not defined by titles or commands, but by how you choose to act when acting rightly carries a cost. Character, ultimately, reveals itself in what you refuse to trade. Epictetus tells of an athlete who chose death rather than mutilation, who would not survive at the cost of losing what made him who he was. Not all of us will face such stark choices. Most compromises are subtler. A small dishonesty here, a minor betrayal there, an incrementally diminishing standard. But each of us must decide which compromises destroy the inner self, which trades are too costly to make. Integrity, once sold, fetches no second buyer. You cannot unring that bell, cannot unknow what you learned about yourself in the moment you chose comfort over principle. This is not meant to inspire guilt or despair, but clarity. Know what is non-negotiable within you. Protect it fiercely. And when you are tempted to trade it for something external, remember, what you gain will be temporary, but what you lose will be yourself. Courage, the ability to stand firm in such moments, does not arrive spontaneously. It grows through preparation, through long practice before the crisis arrives. The bull does not discover courage when the lion leaps. That courage was formed in winters of training, in countless smaller tests that built strength gradually, almost invisibly. The brave person likewise builds inner strength before catastrophe strikes. This is why philosophy is a daily practice, not a theory to be studied and shelved. You practice reason in small trials, in minor frustrations, in petty disappointments, in everyday inconveniences. You practice observing your impressions, questioning your judgments, choosing your responses. And through this accumulated practice, through these thousands of small moments of choosing wisdom over reactivity, you build a foundation, so that when a great test comes, when real danger or loss or fear arrives, you do not have to invent courage in that moment. You simply draw upon the strength you have been building all along. What you are protecting, what you are training yourself to preserve, is ultimately your will, your capacity for choice, for consent, for inner direction. You cannot always keep your body safe, your wealth secure, or even your life intact. These things are subject to forces beyond your control. But you can always keep mastery over your will, over how you meet what comes, over whether you consent inwardly to what external forces demand. Before yielding to fear or desire, before making any significant choice, ask yourself this question: at what price am I selling my freedom of choice? Every time you act from fear, you purchase temporary relief at the cost of your inner liberty. Every time you chase after something external with desperation, you trade your dignity for the possibility of satisfaction. Let no bargain, however appealing, tempt you to exchange your sovereignty for comfort. This is the essence of freedom. Not getting what you want, but remaining the author of your own responses regardless of what occurs. And as you practice this, as you work to refine your character and strengthen your will, remember, perfection is not required, only sincere effort. You may never become a Socrates in wisdom, a Milo in strength, or a Croesus in wealth. The heights others have reached may be beyond you, but that is no excuse for idleness, no reason to abandon the work. Virtue measures effort, not outcomes. It measures the quality of your striving, not the distance you travel. Even if nature made you slower to learn, weaker in body, less favored by circumstances, reason still calls you to perfect yourself within your own limits, to become the best version of what you actually are, not the inferior version of what someone else is. There is dignity in this sincere effort, beauty in the honest attempt to live well within your particular constraints. You do not compete with others. You compete only with your own potential, with the gap between who you are and who you could become. Rest now in this understanding. Let these thoughts settle softly into the quiet places of your mind. You are called to a life of integrity, of courage built through practice, of freedom preserved through daily vigilance. Not perfection, but sincere and patient effort toward excellence. Breathe deeply and know that even in sleep, even in surrender to rest, you are honoring your nature by allowing recovery, by accepting the rhythms of human limitation. This too is wisdom. Let us journey deeper now into the heart of Stoic teaching, into the profound recognition of who and what you truly are. Remember your divine lineage. This is not merely poetry or flattery. It is, for the Stoic, a fundamental truth about your nature. You are not merely a body of flesh, a collection of bones and organs stumbling through time. You are something far more remarkable, a being endowed with reason, with the capacity for understanding, for choice, for wisdom. This rational faculty, this inner light of consciousness, is a spark of the divine itself, however you understand that term. Whether you conceive of it as God, as nature, as the ordering principle of the universe, or simply as the sacred potential within human consciousness, the truth remains. You carry something extraordinary within you. To forget this is to live diminished, like an orphan wandering lost in your own father's house, surrounded by riches you do not recognize, claiming poverty while standing in a palace. When you remember what you are, when you connect with this deeper identity, everything shifts. Your problems do not disappear, but they are contextualized within a larger understanding. You are not merely a creature of appetites and fears. You are something more. And this brings us to an essential distinction. Do not mistake flesh for yourself. The body you inhabit is real, certainly. It is the vehicle through which you experience this world. It hungers and must be fed. It tires and must rest. It aches, ages, and will eventually die. In all of this, it is deeply animal, sharing its nature with every living creature that has ever drawn breath. There is no shame in this. It is simply what is. But the body is not you, not in the deeper sense. Your true self is the mind, rational, moral, conscious, capable of choosing how to respond to what the body experiences. This is the part of you that can observe pain without being destroyed by it, that can feel hunger without being controlled by it, that can face death without being annihilated before it arrives. Let the body serve you as the instrument it is. Care for it, maintain it, respect its needs, but never, never let it rule you. When the body's demands become the commanding voice of your life, when comfort becomes your highest value and discomfort your greatest fear, you have inverted the proper order. The servant has become the master, and the master has forgotten who they are. When you remember your true nature, When you reconnect with that rational divine spark within you, certain thoughts become impossible to sustain. Hold noble thoughts worthy of your origin. Imagine, truly imagine, that you believed yourself to be the offspring of Zeus, or the child of the highest principle in the universe. If you carried that identity in your bones, how could you stoop to petty envy? How could you degrade yourself with deceit or wallow in self-pity? Such thoughts would feel absurd, beneath you, incompatible with who you are. Low thoughts dishonor your divine parentage. Each act of small-minded resentment, each moment of cheap manipulation, each indulgence in victim thinking is a denial of your source. This is not about performance or pretense, not about acting superior to others. It is about aligning your inner life with the truth of what you are. Every thought, every intention, every quiet choice you make when no one is watching, these should reflect your origin. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but directionally, sincerely, with increasing consistency. And in this, reject false humility. There is a tendency, perhaps especially in those who are trying to be good, to speak of themselves with contempt, to call themselves poor, wretched, worthless. This might feel like modesty, like appropriate self-awareness. But Epictetus would say it is actually ignorance, a failure to recognize your true worth. Real modesty does not lie in self-contempt. It lies in living up to your nature, disciplined, faithful, just, without arrogance or comparison to others. False humility debases what the universe has made noble. True humility recognizes both the gift you have been given and the responsibility it carries. You are neither more nor less than what you are, a being capable of reason, called to use that capacity well. To pretend otherwise, in either direction, is a kind of lie. You stand at a crossroads in every moment, and this is the choice you face. You share your flesh with animals and your reason with God. Each moment, whether you recognize it or not, you decide to which side you belong. When you follow passion unreflectively, when anger sweeps you into cruelty, when desire drives you into degrading pursuits, when fear controls your choices, you descend. You join yourself to the animal kingdom, acting from instinct and impulse rather than understanding. There is no judgment in this observation, only description. Animals are what they are, and there is a kind of innocence in their nature. But you are not merely an animal. When you follow reason instead, when you pause before acting, when you choose the good over the pleasant, when you align yourself with principle rather than impulse, you ascend. You move toward the divine aspect of your nature. This is the daily work, the moment-by-moment practice, noticing which master you are serving, which inheritance you are claiming. Beware the beast within. The wolf acts treacherously, the lion violently, the fox deceitfully, not from malice, but from nature. They are what they are. But examine your own actions honestly. Do you become wolf-like when afraid, resorting to betrayal to protect yourself? Do you become lion-like when angry, using force and aggression to impose your will? Do you become fox-like when threatened, deploying manipulation and dishonesty to get what you want? In these moments, you have not transcended the animal. You have simply joined it. You have abandoned the one thing that makes you human, the capacity to choose your response based on reason rather than instinct. Reason is your shepherd, the faculty that guides the animal nature toward higher purposes. Without it, without the conscious application of understanding and principle, you join the herd of beasts. You may walk upright and speak in words, but inwardly you have surrendered what makes you distinctly human. Make reason your home. Where you dwell determines what you experience. if you make your home in the flesh, if your identity and security are rooted in the body and its conditions, you will live in constant fear and desire. Fear of pain, of loss, of death. Desire for pleasure, for comfort, for the satisfaction of every appetite. This is a restless, anxious existence, always at the mercy of circumstances. But if you dwell in reason instead, if you make your home in the part of you that is eternal and unchanging, you discover peace. Not the absence of challenge, not the guarantee of comfort, but a deep stability that external events cannot shake. Let your mind remain where it is eternal, in principles, in virtue, in the capacity for right judgment, not where it decays, not in the transient conditions of flesh and circumstance. This is not escape from reality. It is finding your true address within reality. From this dwelling place, you discover how to truly honor the divine. You worship God or the highest principle, or your own best nature, not primarily through rituals or hymns, though these may have their place. You worship through conduct, through behaving as the offspring of divine reason should behave. Truthful, because deception is beneath you. Kind, because cruelty betrays your nature. Just, because fairness reflects the universal order. Self-controlled, because discipline honors the divine gift of choice. Each act of virtue is a prayer of the rational soul. When you resist the temptation to lie for convenience, you are praying. When you choose generosity over grasping, you are praying. When you meet difficulty with courage rather than complaint, you are praying. The prayer is not in the words you speak, but in the life you live, in the quality of character you embody moment by moment. This recognition should elevate your sense of duty, should make even small choices feel significant. A child of God cannot act in trivial or ignoble ways without contradiction. Every decision, even the ones that seem inconsequential, carries weight. In each choice, ask yourself, would this suit one born of divine reason? Would this choice, this word, this thought be fitting for someone who carries the spark of the eternal within them? Let this question sanctify even your smallest actions. The way you speak to a stranger, the honesty with which you handle a minor transaction, the patience with which you endure a small inconvenience, all of it becomes sacred when understood as an expression of your true nature. You are not trying to impress anyone or earn approval. You are simply living in alignment with what you are. And in this way, guard against becoming less than human. It is possible, tragically possible, to sink below your nature. To slander is to transform your divine capacity for speech into a weapon of harm. To lie is to corrupt your reason, using it to obscure rather than reveal truth. To deceive is to betray the trust implicit in being a rational creature among other rational creatures. Each of these acts transforms your divine nature into something base and crawling, something less than what you were meant to be. This is the real tragedy, not the external losses you might suffer, but the internal degradation when you abandon your highest capacities. Preserve your humanity by remaining faithful to the godly light within you, not through perfection. You will stumble, you will fail, you will forget, but through return, through recommitment, through the patient practice of remembering what you are and choosing to live accordingly. As you rest now, let this truth settle deep within you. You are not an accident, not merely flesh programmed by biology and pushed by circumstance. You are a spark of divine reason, capable of wisdom, of virtue, of transcending animal nature through the miracle of conscious choice. This is your inheritance. This is what you are called to honor, to develop, to express in the particular circumstances of your particular life. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, But now, in this moment, in this breath, you are the child of something vast and good. Live like it, rest in it, and know that even in sleep, even in the necessary surrender of consciousness, you remain what you are, divine reason resting in a temporary home of flesh, gathering strength to awaken again and choose well. Let us move now into the territory of progress, of growth, of the daily work of becoming who we are meant to be. Progress begins in the mastery of desire and aversion. This is where true learning starts, not in accumulating facts or impressing others with knowledge, but in understanding what to desire and what to avoid. And here is the revelation that changes everything. Both happiness and peace depend on this mastery, not on getting what you want, but on wanting rightly, not on avoiding what frightens you, but on fearing appropriately. Direct your aversion only toward what is contrary to your moral will, toward actions and choices that would degrade your character, that would violate your integrity. Never direct your aversion toward things beyond your control, toward illness, loss, death, the opinions of others. To do so is to guarantee disturbance, to set yourself in opposition to reality itself. You cannot control whether you fall ill, but you can control whether you face illness with courage or cowardice. You cannot control whether others approve of you, but you can control whether you act with integrity. This distinction, simple to state but profound in practice, is the foundation of all progress. As you advance, you learn to withdraw desire and employ reason instead. The progressing soul, the one genuinely moving toward wisdom, learns to delay gratification, to release desperate craving, to stop seeking fulfillment in external goods. The shift is from grasping outward to cultivating inward, from chasing what the world offers to developing what you already possess. To crave what may be denied, wealth, health, approval, success, ensures disturbance. You place your peace in hands other than your own, in forces beyond your governance. But freedom, genuine inner freedom, lies in desiring only what depends on you. Desire to use your reason well. Desire to act with courage when courage is called for. Desire to respond to others with kindness. These things are yours to achieve, regardless of circumstance. And in limiting your desires to what is actually within your power, you discover something remarkable. Satisfaction becomes possible, not because you get everything you want, but because what you want is achievable. Virtue is the fruit of stability, and progress toward virtue is progress toward tranquility. These are not separate goals, one moral, one psychological, but two aspects of the same development. You will know you are improving not by counting the books you've read or the concepts you can explain, but by examining how calmly you live. Do events still throw you into chaos, or can you welcome them as they come? When plans fail, when people disappoint, when your body ails or your circumstances shift, do you remain unshaken in your principles? This is the measure. The improving soul doesn't experience fewer difficulties. It meets them with increasing steadiness. The outer weather may be just as stormy, but the inner climate becomes more stable, more peaceful, more capable of maintaining its center regardless of what swirls around it. And here is a crucial warning. Do not mistake scholarship for progress. It is possible to read all the philosophers, to understand their arguments deeply, to discuss their ideas with sophistication, and yet to have made no real progress at all. Reading is valuable, understanding is important, but these are not yet improvement. The proof of philosophy is not intellectual grasp, but the peaceful use of reason under stress. When loss arrives, when fear whispers, when anger rises, how do you respond? That is the test. The soul measures progress, not the bookshelf. A person with a simple education who faces hardship with grace has advanced further than a scholar who crumbles at the first difficulty. Philosophy is not meant to furnish your mind with impressive ideas. It is meant to transform how you live, to change what disturbs you and what doesn't, to make you increasingly free and increasingly at peace. So look for growth where your struggles lie. Your task is not to recite doctrines perfectly or to win debates about Stoic theory. Your task is to master your impulses, to examine closely how you react to events, how you resist what you cannot control, how you respond when triggered. If desire still disturbs you, if you find yourself agitated by wanting what you don't have or fearing the loss of what you do, look there for your work. That is where growth waits. Progress is found where turmoil still exists. The calm areas of your life require no particular attention. They are already functioning well. But the places where you lose your center, where peace dissolves into anxiety or grasping or resentment, those are your teachers. Those are showing you exactly where the next layer of work needs to happen. Don't avoid them. Don't be discouraged by them. Lean into them with curiosity and patience, understanding that every struggle is an opportunity to practice what you're learning. Show your strength, not your tools. The athlete's worth is not measured by the weights he owns or the equipment in his gymnasium. It is seen in muscle and endurance, in actual performance, in what the body has become through training. In exactly the same way, the philosopher's worth is known by serenity, generosity, and constancy, by the quality of character displayed in daily living, not by scrolls or syntax, not by the ability to quote texts or parse arguments. Let your character, not your commentaries, prove your progress. When others encounter you, what do they experience? Do they find someone at peace, someone generous in spirit, someone consistent in principle? Or do they find someone who talks beautifully about virtue but lives in perpetual disturbance? The world does not need more people who can discuss philosophy. It needs people who embody it, whose presence itself is a kind of teaching, whose way of being demonstrates what it looks like to live according to reason. This embodiment happens through daily practice, through training the will in natural living. The advancing soul turns inward, not in narcissistic self-absorption, but in attentive self-cultivation. Each morning, before the day's demands begin, it rehearses what matters: fidelity to commitments, modesty in self-assessment, freedom from enslaving desires, restraint in impulse and speech. And then, as the day unfolds, each simple act becomes an exercise in accordance with nature. Bathing becomes an opportunity to practice acceptance of the body's needs and limitations. Eating becomes a chance to practice moderation and gratitude. Working becomes a field for applying diligence and integrity. Nothing in life is too small for virtue. Every moment, every interaction, every mundane task is an opportunity to practice living well. The person who waits for great occasions to display virtue will wait forever, or will perform badly when those occasions arrive. But the person who treats every moment as practice, who brings attention and principle to the smallest acts, builds a foundation that will hold when truly tested. And through this practice, you discover where freedom truly lies. Freedom is not in circumstance, but in the will. The person who desires or fears what lies beyond their control becomes a slave to accident, to chance, to fortune, and to anyone who has power over those external things. If you desperately want wealth, you become enslaved to markets, to employers, to anyone who controls money. If you fear death above all, you become enslaved to anyone who can threaten your life. But the free person, the genuinely liberated soul, is master of their will alone and accepts all else as the will of God, or nature, or the ordering of the universe. This doesn't mean passive resignation to injustice or refusal to work toward good outcomes. It means understanding that your freedom doesn't depend on getting what you want, but on maintaining sovereignty over your response to what you get. You can work diligently toward goals while remaining inwardly free, while refusing to let the outcome determine your peace. The student of philosophy seeks deliverance from lamentation. This is the goal, the practical outcome we're working toward. You study not to become eloquent or impressive, but to silence the voice of complaint that lives in every untrained mind, to stop saying woe is me when difficulty arrives, to stop declaring that life has been unfair, that you've been singled out for suffering, that what has happened shouldn't have happened. The wise person, through patient practice, learns to face death, exile, poverty, loss without bitterness. They learn to say instead, if the gods will it so, let it be. Not because they enjoy suffering or because they don't care about outcomes, but because they understand the difference between what is and what they wish were. They meet reality on reality's terms without the additional burden of resentment. This is liberation, not from difficulty, but from the suffering we add to difficulty through our resistance. And for this teaching, for this possibility of freedom and peace, reverence is appropriate. Humanity built temples to those who taught us to grow food, who showed us how to cultivate wheat and olives, who enabled our physical survival. We honor these benefactors, and rightly so. Yet we often neglect gratitude for those who showed us how to grow in reason, how to cultivate wisdom, how to harvest peace from the soil of daily experience. Give thanks to God, or to the source of mind, or to the philosophers who carried this wisdom forward for the greater harvest. Wisdom that yields happiness and peace. Not comfort, not the absence of challenge, but the capacity to live well regardless of circumstance. This is a gift more valuable than all the crops humanity has ever grown. It feeds something deeper than the body. It nourishes the soul that you truly are. Rest now in this understanding. Progress is possible. It happens through daily attention to desire and aversion, through the patient work of mastering impulse, through treating every moment as an opportunity to practice living well. You are not seeking perfection but direction, not the absence of struggle, but the capacity to meet struggle with increasing wisdom. Each day, each moment, each choice is an opportunity to grow. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, genuinely, in the direction of freedom and peace. Breathe slowly, release the need for external validation, and know that the work you are doing, quietly and without fanfare, in the privacy of your own mind and will, is the most important work there is. Let us turn now toward truth itself, and toward the obstacles that stand between us and clear seeing. Truth is self-evident to the honest mind. When someone denies what is plainly observable, what is directly before them, the problem is rarely that truth has hidden itself away in some inaccessible place. Truth, by its nature, reveals itself to those willing to see. The difficulty lies not in knowledge's absence, but in the will's refusal to acknowledge what it already perceives. Pride enters and darkens vision. The ego, protecting itself from uncomfortable recognitions, throws up barriers between awareness and admission. You have likely experienced this yourself, moments when you knew something was true but resisted accepting it because acceptance would require change, would demand that you abandon a cherished belief or admit a mistake. The truth was there all along, patient and unchanging. What was missing was not information but honesty, not evidence but the courage to face what the evidence revealed. This is why wisdom requires not just intelligence but humility. not just perception, but the willingness to be corrected. And here we must distinguish between healthy questioning and corrosive skepticism. Skepticism can become moral blindness when taken too far. To question is human, natural, even necessary. The examined life requires that we test our beliefs, probe our assumptions, refuse blind acceptance of what we're told. But to doubt everything, to treat all claims as equally questionable, to lose the capacity to distinguish between well-founded truth and baseless assertion, this is not sophistication. This is decay. When you can no longer tell day from dream, when you cannot distinguish waking reality from fantasy, when good and evil blur into indistinguishable grey, your reason has not matured into subtle discernment. It has rotted into useless confusion. There is a kind of person who takes pride in doubting everything, who mistakes perpetual uncertainty for intellectual depth. But the person who cannot commit to any truth, who floats endlessly in a sea of maybe and perhaps, has lost the very capacity that makes reasoning valuable, the ability to arrive at conclusions and live by them. Epictetus warns of the hardened soul, and he distinguishes two forms of this hardening. One is the hardening of the intellect, which loses the capacity to perceive truth clearly. The mind becomes rigid, unable to recognize new information or adjust to fresh evidence. But there is a second hardening, and it is worse. The hardening of conscience, which no longer blushes at wrong. The person afflicted with this disease can commit injustice, can speak lies, can harm others without the slightest tremor of shame. And often, such a person feels wise, feels liberated from what they consider the weakness of moral scruple. They have mistaken the death of conscience for the achievement of strength. But to lose the capacity for shame is not to transcend morality. It is to fall below the human threshold, to become something less than what you were meant to be. The second disease is worse because while intellectual blindness might be corrected through education, moral blindness resists all correction. The person who cannot see may yet learn to see, but the person who does not want to see, who has armored themselves against the very possibility of moral correction, has closed the door from the inside. Fear not bodily decay, but the death of the soul. We strain mightily to preserve our bodies from injury, spending vast energy on exercise and diet and medical care. And there is nothing wrong with this. The body deserves reasonable maintenance, but observe the disproportion. We take such care to preserve the flesh, yet take no care at all to preserve our judgment from corruption. We allow our minds to be filled with distortions, our moral sense to be dulled by convenience, our capacity for clear thinking to be compromised by bias and wishful thinking. The soul dies not when the body ceases to breathe, but when it ceases to feel truth, when it loses the ability to recognize what is real and good. You can be walking and talking, fully alive in body, yet dead in soul, unable to perceive clearly, unwilling to act rightly, cut off from the very faculties that make you human. This is the death worth fearing, the decay worth preventing. Reason is your divine light. It is the lamp that illuminates your path through existence, that allows you to distinguish true from false, good from evil, wise from foolish. Guard it carefully. If you allow this lamp to burn out, if you neglect it or deliberately extinguish it, what remains to guide you? The beast follows impulse, acting on instinct and immediate desire. The slave follows orders, doing what they are commanded without understanding why. But the rational person follows evidence, follows the light of understanding wherever it leads, even when it leads to uncomfortable places. Let your reason never be extinguished through neglect, through willful ignorance, or through the substitution of convenient beliefs for difficult truths. Tend this light daily. Feed it with honest inquiry. Protect it from the winds of prejudice and self-deception. It is your most precious possession, the faculty that makes you capable of freedom and virtue. And yet, recognize the limits of what you can do for others. Do not argue with the willfully blind. When someone has chosen not to see, when they have committed themselves to a particular darkness, even the brightest light becomes an offense to them. They will squint and turn away, complaining that you are hurting their eyes. Argument cannot awaken someone who prefers their own darkness, who has invested their identity in not knowing. You will exhaust yourself, grow frustrated, perhaps even begin to doubt your own clarity. Save your energy for those who truly seek understanding, whose questions are genuine rather than rhetorical, who ask because they want to learn rather than to defend. This is not callousness but wisdom. Some people are not yet ready to see, and that is not your failure. You can offer light, but you cannot force anyone to open their eyes. The person most difficult to help is the one caught in self-deception. Self-deception is worse than ignorance in a fundamental way. The one who cannot see, who simply lacks information or understanding, may learn when taught. Their mind is open, waiting to be filled. But the one who refuses to see, who actively maintains their illusion, who delights in falsehood because it serves some purpose, has erected an active barrier against truth. To lie to oneself is to wound the soul from within. It is a kind of violence you perpetrate against your own awareness, forcing yourself to believe what you know is not true, to deny what you perceive clearly. This is the deepest form of self-enslavement because you are both prisoner and jailer, both victim and perpetrator. The chains are invisible because you yourself have forged them and convinced yourself they are not there. And sometimes this self-deception manifests as a dangerous confusion. Strength without conscience becomes savagery. Some people mistake moral callousness for courage, confusing the absence of shame with the presence of fortitude. They admire the person who can do or say anything without flinching, who appears unmoved by moral considerations. But to act without shame is not strength. It is brutality cloaked in boldness. True courage involves acting rightly even when it is difficult, even when it carries costs. The person who feels no moral constraint, who experiences no inner check on their behavior, is not brave. They are simply disconnected from the moral sense that makes human community possible. They are dangerous in the way a fire or a flood is dangerous, powerful but without direction, strong but without purpose, beyond their own impulse. Let shame preserve your humanity. This might sound strange in a culture that often treats shame as purely negative, as something to be eliminated. But there is a kind of shame that is healthy and necessary. The capacity to feel moral discomfort when you have acted wrongly. The ability to blush when you have violated your own standards. Modesty and reverence are the safeguards of the rational soul. When these are lost, even a powerful intellect becomes merely a weapon of vice, a tool for rationalizing harm, for justifying cruelty, for cleverly defending the indefensible. Keep alive the ability to blush, to feel appropriate embarrassment when you have fallen short. This is not weakness. It is the boundary between beast and human. The beast feels no shame because it acts from instinct. The human, capable of moral reasoning, can recognize when they have failed to live up to their own nature. This recognition, uncomfortable as it is, preserves the possibility of correction and growth. Ultimately, truth requires both perception and virtue. Philosophy is not merely about seeing clearly, though clear seeing is essential. It is also about living rightly. These two dimensions cannot be separated. The eyes of the mind open only when the heart values honesty above pride. If you love being right more than you love truth itself, your perception will always be distorted by ego. If you need to believe certain things in order to maintain your self-image, you will be blind to evidence that threatens that image. To know truth, one must first love it, must value it more than comfort, more than pride, more than the pleasant illusions that make life feel simpler. This love of truth is not natural or automatic. It must be cultivated through practice, through choosing honesty even when it hurts, through facing what you would rather avoid, through admitting what you would rather deny. Rest now in the commitment to honesty. Not perfect honesty. You will deceive yourself at times. You will prefer comfortable illusions. You will squint away from difficult truths. But directional honesty, the sincere effort to see clearly, to face reality as it is rather than as you wish it were. Guard your reason like the precious light it is. Cultivate the healthy shame that preserves your humanity. And love truth more than you love being comfortable. This is the foundation of wisdom. This is the soil in which all genuine progress grows. Breathe deeply, release the need to be right, and commit yourself, again and always, to the patient work of seeing clearly and living accordingly. Let us now open ourselves to a vision of wholeness, to the perception of harmony that runs through all existence. See the harmony of all things. This is not merely poetic sentiment. It is a practice, a discipline of perception. To praise providence, to genuinely honor the ordering intelligence that structures reality, you must learn to see how each thing fits into the order of the whole. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything connects, supports, balances, complements. The wise person does not merely look with casual eyes, skimming the surface of experience. They perceive, they penetrate beneath appearances to recognize the intricate web of relationships that makes existence possible. The world is filled with meaning for those who have developed eyes to discern it and a heart open enough to bless it. This is a skill, not a given. It requires training your attention, learning to notice connections, cultivating wonder at the extraordinary fact that things work together at all. When you begin to see this harmony, gratitude arises naturally, not as an obligation, but as the appropriate response to recognizing how thoroughly you are held by an intelligent order. Gratitude and understanding are twin virtues, and they need each other. One person may see the design, may recognize intellectually how things fit together, yet remain cold, analytical, unmoved. They perceive the mechanism but feel no appreciation. Another may give thanks profusely, may overflow with sentiment and praise, yet understand nothing of how things actually work. Their gratitude is vague, untethered to genuine comprehension. True reverence marries both. Clear perception of the world's order and a heart turned in gratitude toward its source. When you understand how the rain nourishes the earth, how the earth feeds the plant, how the plant sustains the animal, how the animal serves the ecosystem, and how you participate in this vast exchange, gratitude becomes specific, grounded, intelligent. And when gratitude accompanies understanding, it deepens perception, making you more attentive, more willing to look closely at how things work. The two virtues spiral together, each strengthening the other. Nothing in nature is without purpose. This is a bold claim, perhaps difficult to accept in moments of suffering or when confronted with apparent waste. But consider, if the eye exists, so too must light. The eye makes no sense in a dark universe. And if hunger exists, so must sustenance. Hunger without the possibility of satisfaction would be pure cruelty, senseless torment. But it is not. everything that is complements something else. Every need has a corresponding provision, every capacity a corresponding opportunity. By contemplating this interdependence, by tracing the connections between things, the soul learns to trust the intelligence that fashioned the whole, not blindly, not by suppressing doubt, but through observation. Look closely and you will see. The world is not random chaos barely held together. It is intricate order, profound coherence, a system so complex and so balanced that it exceeds human capacity to fully comprehend, yet reveals enough to inspire awe. Recognize the divine artificer in all creation. When you encounter a beautiful instrument, a violin, a telescope, a finely crafted tool, you naturally infer a craftsman. The object itself proves the existence of skill, intention, design. The harmony of the world, far more intricate and beautiful than any human creation, likewise reveals its maker. To call such order the product of pure chance is to admire an intricate carving and deny the sculptor's hand, to marvel at a symphony while insisting no composer existed. Whether you conceive of this maker as God, as nature, as the organizing principle of the universe, or simply as the mysterious intelligence implicit in existence itself, the recognition stands. You are surrounded by evidence of mind, of purpose, of creative intelligence expressing itself through every form and pattern you encounter. And here is something crucial. Humanity's role is not use alone, but understanding. Animals use the world, and there is nothing wrong with this. The deer eats grass, the bird builds nests, the lion hunts. All are using their environment to survive. But humanity does more. We interpret what we encounter. We ask not just, how can I use this, but what does this mean? How does it work? Why is it this way? Reason lifts us above mere appetite so that we may live knowingly and nobly among the works of God. To live as beasts, consuming without reflection, using without comprehension, moving through existence in unreflective pursuit of comfort and pleasure, is to betray the gift of reason. You have been given the capacity to understand and to waste it, to ignore it, to live as though you are merely an intelligent animal rather than a rational being, is to dishonor your own nature. Life's purpose, then, is contemplation and conformity to nature. The irrational creatures find their completion in use. The sheep grazes, the wolf hunts, and in doing so, they fulfill their nature. But humanity finds completion in comprehension, in understanding. Your highest task is to live according to nature, and by this the Stoics mean to act and think in harmony with reason, the divine faculty within you that mirrors providence itself. You are a small piece of the universal mind, a particular expression of the intelligence that orders all things. When you think clearly, act rightly, respond wisely, you align yourself with this larger intelligence. You participate consciously in the harmony that unconscious things participate in automatically. This is your unique role, your particular contribution to the whole. Do not die without having been a spectator of God's works. Many people will travel vast distances to marvel at statues, to stand before famous works of human art, to see monuments and museums. And there is value in appreciating human creativity. But notice how often we neglect the wonders that surround us daily, that cost nothing to witness, that are freely available in every moment. To observe a sunrise with understanding, to really see it, not just glance at it while thinking of other things, but to perceive the physics of light, the rotation of the earth, your participation in this cosmic dance. This is greater than gazing at even the finest marble statue. The sun, the clouds, the grass beneath your feet, the complexity of your own breathing body. These are the works of the same divine hand that shaped you. They deserve your attention, your wonder, your sustained contemplation. Do not be the person who dies having seen many museums, but never having truly looked at a tree. And when difficulty comes, as it inevitably will, remember, adversity reveals your divine faculties. Trials are the stage on which virtue acts, the arena where your highest capacities are called forth and tested. As Hercules proved his strength not in comfort, but through monsters, through labors that demanded everything he had, you prove your nobility through hardship, through challenges that require you to access resources you might not have known you possessed. Ask not for ease then, but for the courage to use what God has given you. Pray not that obstacles be removed, but that you rise to meet them with the faculties you carry. This is the perspective shift that changes everything. From seeing hardship as an interruption of life, to seeing it as one of life's essential components, the very means by which you discover and develop who you are. Greatness of soul shows itself not in dramatic moments alone, but in how you meet small discomforts. When minor irritations arise, a runny nose, poor weather, a headache, an inconvenience, use your reason instead of complaint. Providence has given you hands to wipe your nose, strength to endure discomfort, and mind to accept what cannot be changed. These are not trivial gifts. They are the provisions appropriate to the challenges you face. To grumble when you possess exactly what you need to handle the situation is ingratitude. To act wisely, using what you have been given to address what confronts you, is thanksgiving in action. You do not need to say prayers of thanks if your every action embodies gratitude. If you meet each moment with the recognition that you have been equipped for it. At the root of all this lies faith in providence, and this faith is the foundation of freedom. God, or nature, or the intelligence that orders things, has given you certain powers that are entirely unimpeded. Your will. No one can force you to consent to anything inwardly. Your judgment. You alone decide what something means to you. Your endurance. The capacity to bear what comes with dignity. These are inviolate, untouched by the world, or even by the gods themselves. External forces may constrain your body, may limit your options, may take your possessions or even your life. But they cannot touch these inner powers unless you surrender them. Use them as divine gifts, as sacred capacities entrusted to your care. And when you do, when you exercise your will freely, judge events wisely, and endure hardship with grace, you live as a child of God, not as a beggar before fate, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a conscious participant in the divine order, using your particular gifts to play your particular part in the vast harmony of existence. Rest now in this vision. You are not separate from the whole, but woven into it. You are not abandoned, but equipped for exactly what you face. You are not a random accident, but an expression of the same intelligence that shapes stars and seasons. The world is meaningful, and you have the capacity to perceive that meaning. Adversity is not punishment, but opportunity. And your freedom, your deepest freedom, lies not in getting what you want, but in using what you have been given with wisdom and grace. Breathe slowly, feel your connection to the whole, and know that you are exactly where you belong, carrying exactly what you need. Let us turn now to the foundation of clear thinking, to the discipline that makes wisdom possible. Logic is a virtue of life, not a mere art. This is essential to understand. The study of argument, the practice of careful reasoning, the discipline of following thoughts to their conclusions. These are not academic exercises meant for clever debate or intellectual showmanship. They are preparations for living wisely. Each reasoning exercise, each effort to think clearly and systematically, prepares the mind to see truth and to act accordingly. When you train yourself to recognize valid arguments, to spot contradictions, to trace implications, you are not just becoming better at argumentation. You are becoming better at life, better at navigating reality, better at making choices that align with what is true and good. Philosophy without logic is like vision without light. You may have eyes, you may desire to see, but you stumble in darkness, unable to distinguish what is before you. Logic is the light that makes genuine seeing possible. And this is crucial because reasoning protects the moral will. To reason well is to guard your mind against error, against deception from others and self-deception from within, against the contradictions that corrupt judgment and lead to poor choices. A careless thinker falls as easily as a careless walker stumbles over obstacles they fail to notice. Precision in thought is not pedantry. It is discipline for the soul. When you allow sloppy thinking, when you accept contradictions, when you follow arguments that don't actually hold together, you weaken your capacity for right action. Because right action depends on right judgment, and right judgment depends on clear thinking. The person who reasons carelessly will act carelessly. The person who accepts whatever sounds good without examining whether it's true will be led astray by every persuasive voice, every appealing lie, every rationalization their own mind produces to justify what they want to do anyway. Do not despise difficult study. There is a tendency, especially when intellectual work becomes challenging, to dismiss it as useless, as mere puzzle solving disconnected from real life. Many mock logical exercises as academic busywork, as the obsession of scholars with nothing better to do. But observe, those who look down on such work, who consider themselves above it, often stumble badly in their own judgments. They fall for obvious fallacies. They contradict themselves without noticing. They make decisions based on reasoning that wouldn't survive 5 minutes of careful examination. If you would walk the path of virtue unswervingly, if you genuinely want to live well and not just feel like you're living well, train first to see clearly where that path lies. The effort is worth it. The difficulty is not obstacle but opportunity. Your mind growing stronger through exertion, like muscles through exercise. One of the most important skills you can develop is to distinguish the true from the plausible. It is not enough to know in a general way that you should accept truth and reject falsehood. Everyone knows this in principle. The challenge is learning how to actually tell them apart in specific cases, especially when falsehood comes dressed in attractive garments, when it sounds reasonable, when it flatters your biases or serves your interests. Just as the money changer must learn to distinguish genuine coins from skillful counterfeits, not by general principles, but through practiced discernment, through knowing exactly what to look for, so must you learn to discern sound reasoning from sophistry. Some false arguments are obvious, crude attempts at deception, but others are subtle, superficially convincing, designed to slip past your defenses. Only through training, through practicing discrimination, through studying how deception works, can you develop the sensitivity to recognize it consistently. This leads to a profound responsibility. Guard assent as sacred. Every argument, every claim, every assertion seeks your assent, your inner yes, your agreement. Learn when to grant it and when to withhold it. This is not a small matter. When you give assent carelessly, when you agree without examining, you sell your reason cheaply. You hand over your judgment to whoever speaks persuasively, whoever presses hard enough, whoever makes you feel good or bad. Wisdom lies in never giving assent too soon, before you have examined the claim, tested the reasoning, considered alternatives, nor withholding it when truth is plain, when evidence is overwhelming and denial would be mere stubbornness. This balance, this calibrated responsiveness, is learned through practice. You must train yourself to pause before agreeing, to ask, is this actually true? Does this reasoning actually hold? Am I consenting because it's valid, or because I want it to be valid? And when engaging with arguments, remain intellectually honest. Withdraw when the premises change. If in debate or discussion someone shifts the meaning of a term, moves the goalposts, or alters an assumption after you've granted it, you are no longer bound by what you originally agreed to. Stand by truth as you understood it, not by words twisted from their original sense. The honest mind owes fidelity to reason, not to verbal traps. This requires vigilance, because shifts in meaning can be subtle. You must track what is actually being claimed, what you actually agreed to, and refuse to be bound by dishonest transformations of your commitments. This is not being difficult, it is being precise, which is a form of honesty. At the same time, maintain perspective. Be calm in the face of error. A mistaken syllogism, a faulty argument, is not the burning of the capital nor the murder of a father. It is not catastrophe. Yet, and this is the nuance, small errors in thought, left uncorrected, do corrupt the moral sense over time. If you allow yourself to accept contradictions, to follow invalid reasoning, to consent to falsehoods, these habits of mind gradually erode your capacity for good judgment. The corruption is slow, almost invisible, but real. Treat each lapse in reasoning as a wound to reason itself and heal it with care, not with panic, not with harsh self-judgment, but with patient correction. I made an error here. Let me understand why. Let me adjust. This is how clarity grows. Sophistry, then, is actually a test of vigilance. False reasoning is to the mind what disease is to the body, not merely a problem to be avoided, but an opportunity to strengthen resistance. Every encounter with confusion, with deceptive argument, with plausible-sounding nonsense, is a chance to exercise clarity, to grow stronger in logic and self-command. The person who never encounters false arguments never develops the discernment to recognize them. Like an immune system that requires exposure to develop strength, your rational faculty grows more robust through confronting and overcoming error. Don't fear encountering bad arguments. Welcome them as training opportunities. But this training requires something from you. Philosophy demands labor and wakefulness. The sluggish avoid intellectual toil, finding excuses, pretending that logical training is excessive, unnecessary, the province of academics with too much time. But the wise know better. Reason, like the body, grows only through disciplined effort. You cannot become strong without exertion. You cannot become clear thinking without the work of thinking carefully, repeatedly, through difficulty. To be lazy in thought is to invite moral blindness, because when the moment of choice arrives, when you face a difficult decision with real consequences, you will draw upon the habits of mind you have built. If those habits are lazy, sloppy, undisciplined, your judgment will reflect that. But if you have trained yourself to think clearly, to reason carefully, to examine your own thinking with rigor, you will have resources to draw upon. Ultimately, right reasoning is right living. These are not separate domains, intellectual and moral, theoretical and practical. They are intimately connected. The misuse of appearances, careless thought, rash assent, these are not trivial mistakes, not mere intellectual errors without consequence. They are ethical failings. When you accept false beliefs, you build your life on sand. When you reason sloppily, you make poor choices. When you give assent carelessly, you become vulnerable to manipulation and self-deception. The person who trains their reason honors their divine nature, exercises the highest faculty they possess, lives up to their potential as a rational being. The person who neglects this training betrays themselves, becoming slave to every illusion, every plausible sounding error, every clever manipulation. They hand over their sovereignty, the very thing that makes them free. This is why logic matters. Not because syllogisms are intrinsically fascinating, not because philosophers enjoy complicated arguments, but because your ability to think clearly determines your ability to live well. Every moment you spend learning to reason better, to spot fallacies, to examine your own thinking, to distinguish truth from falsehood, this is time invested in your freedom, in your capacity for wisdom, in your potential for virtue. It is not separate from the moral life. It is foundational to it. Rest now knowing that every effort to think more clearly, to reason more carefully, to examine your beliefs more rigorously, is sacred work. It is tending the divine light within you, keeping it bright and unobscured. You will make errors, everyone does. The goal is not perfection but direction, not flawless reasoning but sincere commitment to truth. Each time you pause to examine an argument, each time you refuse to accept what sounds good, without testing whether it's true, each time you notice and correct a flaw in your own thinking, you honor your rational nature. You exercise the faculty that makes you most fully human, most genuinely free. Breathe deeply. Let the commitment to clear thinking settle into you, not as burden, but as gift, the capacity to see truly, to reason soundly, to live according to what is real, rather than what is merely comfortable or convenient. This is the foundation of everything else. This is where wisdom begins. Let us explore now the relationship between power and character, between skill and virtue, between what we can do and who we are. Power without character is perilous. This is a truth that echoes through history, visible in countless lives that began with promise and ended in ruin. Any strong faculty, whether logic, rhetoric, memory, physical strength, or charisma, becomes a threat when the will that directs it has not been trained toward what is good. Because power magnifies, it amplifies whatever drives it. If wisdom guides power, the result is beneficial. But if arrogance, selfishness, or vice guide power, the result is destructive. And the greater the power, the greater the destruction. A person of mediocre ability but good character does limited harm. A person of extraordinary ability but corrupt character becomes a catastrophe. This is why character must be cultivated first and foremost. The sharper your tools, the more essential it becomes that you use them rightly. A dull knife in foolish hands is annoying. A sharp knife in foolish hands is dangerous. Skill in argument, then, is meant to serve philosophy, not replace it. The philosopher should indeed be able to handle complete and incomplete arguments, to recognize valid reasoning and expose fallacies, to construct and deconstruct positions. These are valuable skills, but they are tools meant to protect truth and right judgment, not toys for display. When argumentative skill becomes an end in itself, when you practice it for the pleasure of winning debates or impressing audiences, it has detached from its purpose. You have turned what should be a servant of wisdom into an object of vanity. The question to ask yourself is, why am I developing this skill? To see more clearly? To help others think better? To protect myself and others from deception? Or to feel superior? To dominate discussions? to enjoy the admiration that comes from verbal cleverness. The skill itself is neutral, but the motivation transforms it into either virtue or vice. Do not trade virtue for cleverness. Extra exercises in disputation, additional practice in argumentation beyond what wisdom requires, are not progress if they distract from moral improvement. In fact, they risk swelling pride while leaving character untouched. You can become extraordinarily skilled at debate while remaining extraordinarily flawed as a person. You can win every argument and lose yourself in the process. The time and energy you pour into becoming clever could be invested in becoming good, in practicing patience, cultivating kindness, developing self-control, examining your own motives, correcting your own flaws. If you neglect this work in favor of sharpening your argumentative skills, you have made a catastrophically poor trade. You have chosen the shell over the substance, the instrument over the goal. Beware the intoxication of persuasion. There is something seductive about the power to convince others, to sway opinions, to craft beautiful speeches that move audiences. The more a person of weak character practices winning arguments and adorning speech, the more they are tempted to love victory over truth and applause over integrity. This is a genuine addiction, a kind of intoxication. The rush of triumph when you defeat an opponent in debate, the warm glow of admiration when your eloquence impresses. These feelings can become more important than whether you were actually right, whether you served truth, whether you helped anyone, including yourself. You begin to argue not because you believe something, but because you can. Not to discover truth, but to demonstrate dominance. This is the corruption that makes talented people dangerous. The solution is to make your talents serve you, not own you. The untrained youth, upon discovering some faculty or gift, becomes an appendage to that ability. If he can argue well, he becomes the person who argues. If he can speak beautifully, he becomes the person who performs. He is dragged by these abilities into vanity, defined by them, controlled by them. But the philosopher inverts this relationship. The philosopher makes abilities mere appendages to a rightly ordered will. The skills serve the person, not the other way around. I can argue effectively. Good. I will use this skill when truth needs defending. But I will not become someone who must always argue, who cannot remain silent, who needs the victory. This is mastery, not of the skill alone, but of your relationship to the skill. To maintain this proper relationship, you must separate accidents from essentials. Consider, Plato was wise and also handsome and strong, but beauty and strength do not belong to philosophy itself. They were accidents of his particular embodiment, not essential to his wisdom. If you confuse accidents with essentials, you will chase shadows instead of the good. You will try to become wise by imitating irrelevant features of wise people. This mistake is everywhere. People observe a successful person and imitate their mannerisms, their dress, their habits, but miss entirely the inner qualities that made them successful. The surface is easy to copy. The substance requires transformation. Do not imitate what is irrelevant to virtue. It is foolish to seek a philosopher's physique or to adopt their limp, as if these made one wise. Yet people do this constantly, focusing on externals because externals are visible, tangible, achievable through simple mimicry. Imitate instead the inner disposition that made them lovers of truth. What was their relationship to their own thoughts? How did they handle being wrong? What did they value most? How did they treat people who couldn't benefit them? These are the questions that point toward what matters. But these require actual work, actual change, not just surface imitation. Where then does true human good actually lie? The true good of man lies in the will, not in the body, not in possessions, not in reputation, not even in the faculties themselves, but in how the will relates to all of these. The highest human good is a certain disposition of the will toward appearances, toward the impressions that flow constantly into consciousness. It is assenting only to what is true and good, and remaining free before all externals. This is what you're actually working toward, not collecting skills, not accumulating knowledge, not even having correct beliefs, but achieving a quality of inner sovereignty where you respond to life with wisdom, where your assent is given carefully, and your freedom is maintained regardless of circumstance. This means you must guard how you relate to impressions. Faculties like reason and speech are neutral in themselves. A knife is neutral. It can cut vegetables or throats. What matters is how the will uses these faculties in response to impressions, either humbly directing them toward virtue, toward understanding, toward helping yourself and others live better, or proudly directing them toward domination, toward proving superiority, toward building a monument to your own cleverness. The faculty doesn't determine this. Your will does, your intention, your governing principle. This is where your attention should focus, not just on developing capabilities, but on ensuring those capabilities serve something worthy. Therefore, train character before sharpening weapons, before you refine powerful intellectual tools, before you develop formidable skills of persuasion and argument. Ensure that your governing faculty is modest, grateful, and devoted to virtue. Otherwise, every new skill becomes another weapon in the hands of a dangerous person, the person you yourself are when character lags behind capability. But if you cultivate character first, if you establish wisdom and humility as your foundation, then every skill you develop becomes an instrument of the good rather than of self-conceit. The same argumentative ability that could make you insufferable instead makes you helpful. The same rhetorical power that could make you manipulative instead makes you persuasive in the service of truth. This is the proper order: character first, skills second. Not because skills don't matter, they do. Not because you shouldn't develop your capacities, you should. But because capacities without character are dangerous, while character without great capacities is at worst harmless and often quietly beneficial. The world does not need more clever people. It desperately needs good people. And if those good people also happen to be clever, if virtue is amplified by skill, that is wonderful. But never sacrifice the first for the second. Never trade who you are for what you can do. Rest now in this commitment to develop your capacities, yes, but always in service to something larger than display, larger than victory, larger than the intoxication of your own effectiveness. Let every skill you sharpen be a tool in the hands of a person committed to wisdom and goodness. Let your growing abilities make you more useful, not more arrogant. Let your power be governed by character, your cleverness by humility, your effectiveness by purpose that transcends yourself. Breathe deeply and know this: the measure of your life will not be what you could do, but what you chose to do with what you could do. Not your potential, but your direction. Not your talents, but what served them, or what they served. Choose wisely, choose character, and let everything else flow from that foundation. Let us expand our vision now beyond the narrow boundaries we so often accept, into a citizenship far more profound than any nation can offer. Live as a citizen of the world. It is natural, almost automatic, to confine your identity to your birthplace, to your city, to the particular corner of earth where you happen to arrive. These places shape you, certainly. They give you language, customs, early experiences, but they are only small fragments of a much larger whole. Do not mistake the fragment for everything. See yourself instead as belonging to the vast community that includes all humans and God, or the divine principle, or the universal nature that connects all rational beings. Your true citizenship is cosmic. You are not merely Athenian or Roman, American or European, but a member of the human family, a participant in the community of all conscious beings. This is not abstract philosophy. It changes how you relate to others. The foreigner is no longer foreign. The stranger is kin. Those who seem different share with you the most essential thing: reason, consciousness, the capacity for understanding and choice. See God as source and kindred. Reason itself reveals that the highest community, the most fundamental fellowship, is composed of God, or the divine intelligence that orders existence, and rational beings. Your very capacity for thought, for communion with truth, for understanding, descends from this divine source. You are not an alien in the universe, not an accident isolated from all else. You are a particular expression of the universal intelligence, a fragment of the whole that contains the whole's essential nature. This is kinship at the deepest level, not the kinship of shared culture or shared genetics, but the kinship of shared essence. Every rational being participates in the divine mind. Every person you encounter, beneath all their particularity and difference, carries this same spark. Let divine kinship banish fear. Consider how people behave when they have powerful connections. If someone feels safe merely by being related to a ruler, to someone with political or military power, how much more should you cease to fear when you recognize God as maker, father, and guardian? Not as a distant authority, but as the very source of what you are, the sustaining intelligence that maintains your existence moment by moment. Insults cannot touch this. Misfortune cannot sever this connection. Contempt from others cannot diminish this reality. When you know yourself as held by something infinitely larger than human opinion or circumstance, fear loses its grip. Not because nothing bad can happen to your body or your circumstances. These remain vulnerable. But because your essential self, your true identity, rests in something external forces cannot reach. And from this recognition flows a certain trust. What sustains life is always near. Observe slaves who escape with nothing, fugitives who leave all possessions behind. Somehow they find food. Somehow they survive. They manage with nothing but themselves, with whatever resourcefulness and courage they can muster. A philosopher, one who understands their divine kinship and their participation in the universal order, should not show less resourcefulness and courage than those who have literally nothing. If people with no advantages manage to continue, how much more should you manage? You who understand that you are never truly abandoned, never truly alone, always held by the intelligence that sustains all existence. This is not magical thinking. It is recognizing that the universe that brought you into being has an interest in maintaining what it creates, that you are woven into patterns of provision and support that operate whether you recognize them or not. But this understanding requires balance. Do not flee the body out of disgust. Yes, recognize that the body and externals are bonds and burdens in a sense, that they limit you, that they create vulnerabilities you would not have as pure mind or spirit. But this recognition must not lead to rash escape or self-destruction. You were placed here, in this body, in these circumstances, for a time. This is your assignment, your station, the role you have been given to play. Patient endurance is called for, not desperate escape, not rejection of embodied existence, but acceptance of the place and service assigned for this portion of your existence. The body is not your enemy. It is your temporary instrument, your current mode of participation in the world. Await the divine signal, not your whim. The impulse to go home to God, to leave this difficult embodied existence, is understandable. When life becomes hard, when the body suffers, when circumstances oppress, the thought of release can seem appealing. But this impulse should be tempered by obedience to something larger than your preference. Remain at your post until released, like a soldier who waits for the commander's word before leaving his station. You should wait for the appropriate time to depart. This is not about suffering needlessly or remaining when genuine release is possible. It is about recognizing that your life is not yours alone to dispose of according to whim. You have a role to play, a contribution to make, a duty to fulfill. When that duty is complete, when the signal comes, through natural death, through the completion of your work, then you go, but not before. Living this way makes tyranny powerless over you. When the body and its possessions are counted as indifferent, not worthless, but not essential to your true self, tyrants, thieves, and courts lose their terror. They can only touch what you no longer regard as truly yours. They can threaten your body, take your property, damage your reputation, and you will respond appropriately to these threats at the practical level. You are not called to be reckless or to invite harm, but inwardly you remain free. They cannot reach what matters most. They cannot force your will, corrupt your judgment, or destroy your essential self. This is the freedom that makes you unconquerable, the inner citadel that no external force can breach. Let Socrates be your pattern in this. When offered the chance to save his life on the condition that he abandon his divinely given mission, to question, to examine, to call Athens to virtue, he refused. He treated God's assignment as more binding than any human command or fear, not because he wanted to die. He had no death wish, but because living wrongly, betraying his purpose, abandoning what he was called to do, was worse than death. The body would die eventually anyway, but the soul could be preserved or corrupted by how he chose. He chose preservation of soul over preservation of body. This is the hierarchy that makes sense when you understand what you truly are. Ask from yourself what is truly yours. Here is a devastating question for those who spend their lives seeking external validation and external goods. A noble soul considers it foolish to beg land, money, or office from others while neglecting the inner resources already within reach. Greatness of spirit, magnanimity, wisdom, courage, self-control. These are available to you directly. You need no one's permission to develop them. No one can grant them or withhold them. They depend entirely on your own choice, your own effort, your own commitment. And yet people spend their entire lives chasing what others control, while ignoring what they themselves control. They beg for what is not theirs to have, while neglecting what is theirs to develop. This is the deepest foolishness, the most tragic inversion of priority. Refuse to live as a mere carcass. When you think that your happiness rises or falls with another person's actions, with their approval or disapproval, their generosity or stinginess, their presence or absence, you reduce yourself to a body and a little blood, to a thing that can be made miserable by external events. But one who knows their divine kinship understands something liberating. No other human can make you miserable in your true self. They can affect your circumstances, certainly. They can make your body uncomfortable, your situation difficult, but your essential self, your rational will, your capacity for dignity and wisdom, these remain yours. They can only be surrendered, never taken. When you grasp this, truly grasp it, you stop living as a vulnerable creature entirely at the mercy of others' moods and choices. You become sovereign in the only domain that truly matters. Rest now in this expanded identity. You are not small, not confined, not limited to the tiny circle you may have imagined. You are a citizen of the cosmos, kin to the divine, held by an intelligence that sustains all existence. Your true wealth is within you, accessible through your own effort. Your true freedom cannot be taken, only given away, and your duty is clear: to remain at your post, to fulfill your role, to develop the inner resources you actually control while accepting with grace what you do not. Breathe deeply, feel the vastness of what you belong to, and know that you are never truly poor, never truly powerless, never truly alone. The universe itself is your home, reason is your kinship, and the choice to live well remains always and entirely yours. Let us turn now to the question of energy, of where we direct our effort, of what commands our attention and zeal. Match worldly zeal with spiritual zeal. Look honestly at how people pursue worldly success. The tireless effort ambitious politicians pour into securing positions, the sleepless nights strategizing, the endless networking and maneuvering and sacrifice. If people labored at their own character with even a fraction of this intensity, if they brought the same relentless dedication to developing wisdom and virtue that they bring to climbing social ladders, the fruits of philosophy would be everywhere. The world would be transformed. But observe the imbalance. Extraordinary effort toward what doesn't ultimately matter. Minimal effort toward what does. People will work themselves to exhaustion for recognition that will fade, for positions they'll eventually lose, for achievements that mean nothing on their deathbed. Yet the work of becoming wise, of developing character, of cultivating the only things that will remain theirs until the end, this they approach casually, when convenient, if at all. The energy is there. The capacity for dedication exists. It is simply misdirected. And part of why this misdirection persists is visible in a common pattern. Distrust vows made in comfort. Epictetus observes an official who, worn down by the demands of public life, swore passionately that in old age he would seek only a quiet life, only peace and contemplation. The vow was sincere in the moment. The exhaustion was real. But watch what happened. The moment Rome came into view, the moment opportunity presented itself, he forgot his resolutions entirely. This shows how weak untested intentions are. When you are tired, when you are suffering the consequences of your choices, reform seems obvious and necessary. Of course you'll change. Of course you'll live differently. But these vows made in distress rarely survive the return of opportunity. The pain fades. The memory of why you wanted to change dims, and the old attractions reassert themselves. Expect old habits to reawaken. Once in sight of the palace, once proximity to power and status became real again, the same man who had sworn off public life eagerly accepted new office and new burdens. This proves how easily desire for importance revives when circumstances invite it. The desire wasn't gone, it was merely dormant, waiting. And this is true for all of us, not just politicians. Whatever you think you've transcended, whatever pattern you believe you've left behind, remains as potential until truly transformed. The alcoholic, who hasn't had a drink in years but hasn't done the inner work, remains vulnerable when stress returns. The person who claims to have given up caring about others' opinions but hasn't examined why they cared will find that caring resurface when triggered. Old habits don't die easily, they wait. And without genuine transformation, without deep work on the roots of the pattern, they return the moment conditions are right. Epictetus wishes he could perform a service for such people. Remember your earlier clarity. He wishes he could stand beside them later when they're caught up again in the very pursuits they once denounced and recall their former words. To hold up a mirror showing how far they have drifted from the insights they once confessed. Not to shame them, but to wake them, because people forget. They genuinely forget what they once saw clearly. The insight that felt so obvious in one state of mind becomes invisible in another. This is why practice is essential, why daily reminder matters, why philosophy must be continuously renewed and not treated as a lesson learned once and finished. But beneath all this lies a crucial distinction. Humans are made for action, not busy work. We are not animals designed for idleness, for passive existence. Energy wants expression. Capacity seeks use. The question is not whether to be active, but what kind of activity is worthy. Soul work, the examination of your own thoughts, the refinement of your character, the pursuit of wisdom and virtue. This is worthy activity. But mere scrambling for offices and honors, the exhausting pursuit of positions and recognition, this is busy work masquerading as importance. It feels active, it consumes energy, but it doesn't build anything that lasts. It doesn't create genuine value. It's motion without progress, effort without growth. So examine how you use each day. Epictetus is honest about his own struggles with this. He notes his temptation to sleep instead of teaching, to choose comfort over duty. He uses his own experience to show that even philosophers must wrestle with sloth, must consciously choose higher work over easier alternatives. This is not a battle you win once. It is a daily choice, sometimes an hourly choice. What will you do with this time? What will you do with this energy? The easy path is always available. Distraction, comfort, the path of least resistance. Choosing the harder but more meaningful work requires continuous recommitment. Compare your tasks with theirs. Courtiers, officials, business people. They spend their days calculating grain shipments, land values, profit margins, petty political advantages. These things have their place. Someone must attend to practical matters. But philosophers are called to study something larger, the governance of the universe itself, the place of rational beings within the cosmic order, the principles that should guide human life. Which work is more important? Which better uses the remarkable capacity of human reason? This is not to despise practical work. Someone must bake bread and manage cities. But to spend a human life, a rational life, entirely on such matters without ever turning to larger questions is to waste your distinctive capacity. Ask which petitions deserve care. Imagine two requests arrive. One is a plea for permission to export corn, a practical matter of commerce and regulation. The other is a sincere request to learn what is truly good, to understand how to live well, to grasp what deserves pursuit and what deserves avoidance. These are not of equal weight. To neglect the second while obsessing over the first is a deep misordering of life, a fundamental confusion about what matters. Yet this is exactly what happens constantly. The practical, the immediate, the externally measurable receives endless attention. The essential, the foundational, the inwardly transformative is postponed, neglected, treated as luxury to be addressed when more pressing matters are handled. But those pressing matters never stop coming. See the baseness of neglecting the soul. It is more shameful, truly more shameful, more degrading to your nature, to ignore questions of virtue, reason, and the human good, than to ignore paperwork or financial calculations, however prestigious those tasks may seem, because the first is your distinctive work as a rational being. The second could be done by anyone with basic competence. When you ignore the soul's work in favor of busyness, When you sacrifice wisdom for productivity, character for achievement, you degrade yourself. You treat your highest capacity as less important than your lowest. You invest energy where it matters least and neglect it where it matters most. And here is something interesting. Let youth's seriousness awaken elders. Old people easily join in when young people are frivolous, playful, unserious. The elder will laugh along, participate in the games, match the lightness. But imagine if they saw young people burning for wisdom instead, genuinely passionate about noble aims, seriously pursuing understanding and virtue. That seriousness would stir something in them. They would be awakened to share and match that dedication. The young have this power to call forth from their elders either frivolity or seriousness, depending on what they themselves embody. And the elders, for their part, have the choice of which invitation to accept. Will you match the triviality you see around you? Or will you be the person whose seriousness calls others upward? Rest now with this question hanging gently in awareness. Where is your zeal actually directed? Not where you wish it were directed, not where you think it should be, but where your actual energy flows day by day. Are you pouring intensity into matters that will evaporate like morning fog? Or are you investing in the work that builds something permanent? Character, wisdom, understanding. The world constantly invites you toward busyness, toward scrambling after things that seem important but aren't. And you have limited energy, limited time, limited attention. Every day you choose, often unconsciously, what deserves your effort. Make that choice conscious. Make it wise. Breathe slowly. Feel the pull of various demands on your attention and energy, and ask yourself, what work is truly mine to do? What activity is worthy of a rational being? What effort will matter when everything else has fallen away? Let the answer guide where you direct your zeal, your seriousness, your limited and precious capacity for sustained effort. Not toward what seems urgent, but toward what is actually important. Not toward what others demand, but toward what your nature requires. This is how zeal becomes wisdom rather than waste. As you drift now toward deeper rest, carry with you these teachings of Epictetus. Remember that you are free in your will, divine in your reason, sovereign in your response to all that life brings. Remember that what truly belongs to you cannot be taken, and what can be taken was never truly yours. Remember that progress is measured not by what you know, but by how you live, not by your words, but by your peace. The Stoic path is not easy, but it is reliable. It does not promise comfort, but it offers something far more valuable, the capacity to remain yourself, whole and dignified, regardless of what the world does. This is the gift Epictetus offers across the centuries. Not escape from difficulty, but mastery in the midst of it. Not the absence of challenge, but the presence of unshakable inner freedom. Rest well, knowing that each day offers a fresh opportunity to choose wisely, to act virtuously, to live according to your highest nature. The work continues tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until your last. But for now, let these truths settle deep within you, nourishing the soul as sleep nourishes the body. Breathe, release, and know that you carry within you everything you need to meet whatever comes with wisdom, courage, and grace.